morning. Papa Bruce here again. This video is a little bit different than what I've done in the past. We're not going to be talking about any equipment or hiking, but as I've mentioned in my other videos, and a few of them anyhow, my wife and I are campground hosts in the summertime in Montana. And in the winter, I act as a wilderness steward in the Superstition Mountains. Basically, I just hike in the mountains and help other people that are hiking, and maybe spend a few nights out from time to time. But we're going to talk about campground hosting today. And you know, hardly a day goes by when we're hosting that a camper doesn't come up to us and say, you know, I want to do that when I retire. That sounds like an awful lot of fun. What's it like? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I've made some notes that I'll refer to, so I'll try to remember everything, though I'm sure I won't. So if you have other questions or comments, just list them right down here in the comment section below the video, and we'll do a Q&A later if there's enough to do. But what we're going to try to cover today is what we do, maybe the pros and cons of hosting, and the types of campgrounds that we've worked at and that I know that are available. Well, first of all, if you don't like people, you sure don't want to be a campground host, because we meet lots of people, and that's what I consider one of the better parts of the so-called job. And it is a job. Most of the campgrounds that we've hosted in, and we've worked with 3 different agencies, and I'll go into those a little bit later, do provide pretty much free camping for the host, and that's pretty much about it. We're both retired. We both like to keep busy. We like to meet people. So this is one of the cons, I think, about the job. It's a fulfilling job. We take some pride in our campground and do our best to make people welcome, and also keep the place clean. And we live in a beautiful place, that's for sure. This campground is in the National Forest south of Missoula in western Montana. I will say that some of the ranger districts we've worked in and other agencies have really strict rules on social media and publicity and that type of thing. So I'm not going to get any of the real super details about the jobs, but I can tell you how you can find out about that. We live near, we can fish, we can hunt, the backpacking is great. Obviously the campground place is free, and as I said, we get to meet all types of people. So those are some of the fun things about the job. Sometimes it's not so much fun, but it depends on where you're hosting, I suppose. We don't have to put up with a lot of mess and what I call snob campers. Most people take pride in their campground and campsite and do a pretty good job of keeping it up. In some campgrounds we've hosted at, there's been a little more noise, usually partying, drinking, etc. That's fairly rare depending on where you're camping and the campground, and basically what's happened there in the past prior to you being the host in the site. Generally speaking, and this is really a generalization, if you're hosting on a lake, often our experience has been it might get a little more of a party type crowd, a little more noise after the quiet time, and you'd have to, get on that. As skiers, fishermen, and I'm a fisherman, I no longer am a skier, but they tend to party and can get a little loud. Usually all it takes is ask them, please, quiet. It is quiet time. People run generators sometimes past the hours that you can run them, and you have to remind them of that. So there is a little bit of policing, I suppose you would say, as a campground host, but I want to stress that the job is a hosting job. You're not a campground cop, and I have run into too many hosts that think they're campground cops and way overstep what they're supposed to be doing. I tell people we're the host. We can tell you what the rules are, and we know, of course, the people that enforce those rules. But we just want you to have a nice stay and enjoy your campground, your forest. After all, if this is state, federal land, it's your land. So enjoy. Typically, what we have to do in our job is, most of the campgrounds we've done this in, we keep track of the campers, either with some kind of a log where we would make note on the log of maybe their license plate number, what dates they check in and what dates they check out. And in every single case that we've ever done, we don't have to collect any money. Matter of fact, I don't want to handle any money. The people do their self-registration, fill out their own envelopes, paid for the campsite either by check or cash, and then deposit it into usually a tube that has a slot in it that's locked, and then the Forest Service people or BIA people, BOR people, whoever that the campground is with will come and collect the money. Sometimes we have to compare the money that's taken in by number with the tickets that are on the post, and it just depends. But for all practical purposes, it's a pretty simple operation, and walking around or driving around logging in these campers is simply another way to meet people. The campground we're at now in the National Forest, we have all sorts of information to give to folks about the area and different things they can do. So it's a good time to meet folks, introduce ourselves, and anyway, make sure they know where they're at, or what the things that they may want to do, I should say. Maintenance-wise, we do make sure that the campground is clean. As I said, we have very little trash to actually pick up. We have trash receptacles, and in this particular campground, we empty those with large garbage bags and deposit them in bigger containers that the garbage truck comes and gets. So that's part of the job. Another part of the job is checking out the outhouses and make sure there's toilet paper, so we always have happy campers. You do not want to run out of toilet paper in your outhouses. But we check that periodically, and haven't really had much of a problem with that either. That's pretty much it. Check people in, greet them, tell them about the area, tell them about different things to do, and maybe do a little bit of maintenance with some garbage, maybe some toilet paper restocking, and that type of thing. So that is not very hard to do, and like I said, one of the reasons we do this is to keep busy, and that doesn't keep you really busy, but you know, it might take up, depending on the campground you're in, half an hour in the morning, and then meeting people again in the evening. Another thing we do, if our campground is full, we might be able to suggest other areas within the general area where they could go, because over the years that we've done this, it's become, busier every single year. This is our 4th year in the Bitterroot area, and we are in the National Forest, as I said, and we work for the Forest Service, or we volunteer for the Forest Service, and we have been very, very pleased with the help that we've gotten from the Forest Service. They certainly support us well. They have, well, I just can't say enough for them, and it would be our intention probably to remain in this particular forest, this particular campground, for a number of years. We, however, do have family in the area, and it's nice to be able to live in a place like this in the summer and be able to, excuse me. Another cause is occasionally the allergies are not so good. Oh, and also occasionally there'll be a mosquito. Anyhow, I was talking about the types of campgrounds we've worked in. This one, as I said, is a Forest Service campground. We also, for one summer, hosted for the Fish and Game, which is a state campground. Some of the state campgrounds have reservation systems, and I've talked to some of the hosts, and I'm talking about in Montana at this point. And of course, there are reservation systems in other states as well with their state agencies. It causes a little more paperwork, computer work. I don't know. I'm not into that. But there are. We did do that one year. There were no reservations at the spot we were in, and it was along the river, so that was nice. But we didn't have as much backup as we do here. We also, for 2 summers, worked for the BOR. The BOR is the Bureau of Reclamation, and they basically maintain and control the campgrounds around a lot of the reservoirs where there's dams. Now, the BOR's primary responsibility is the dams producing power. Campgrounds, at least where we were, seemed to be a real secondary project. Well, it is probably anywhere. The campgrounds are the Forest Service, the BIA, or the Fish and Game. None of them have campgrounds just to have campgrounds. There's also other things to do. But the BOR did not have as much support as the Forest Service, though we, again, met some great people, and we were on a lake, so we were able to have our boat there and do some fishing, though we did have sometimes a little more problems, as I mentioned, with noise and that type of thing. Some of the questions, let me see here, that I can answer. How much do you get paid? This is a volunteer job, so we don't get paid. Every campground host I've talked to is provided their campground spot, and here and in most places we've been, that means power. It means a sewer, water, and sometimes propane, though that's not a big expense, not used often. But so we have all of the hookups at our site. In our campground itself, we have power in handicap sites, and we also have water available throughout the park, but not actually at sites to hook up, where we actually have our own water. This is, as I said, this is pretty common in most of the hosting situations that I'm familiar with. In addition, most of the hosting volunteer opportunities provide some type of a very small daily per diem, which more than actually pretty much covers your gas expense. Some agencies actually pay a little bit of a mileage if you have to use your own vehicle and you do much traveling. We don't. We're usually just in our campground, other than our own exploration throughout the forest. So a free site, maybe a small per diem, meeting super people. I highly recommend it. I will say, though, that you really need to like people. If you're just looking for a camp spot to hide away for the summer, hosting a campground is not the job for you, because you'll definitely meet people. I'm taping this right here at our campsite, and so far no one's come up, but it's early in the morning. Usually if I'm sitting outside, or if we have a fire here, some of the campers will come over and ask questions and talk, and that's great. We met some super people. We've met people that have bicycled across the United States. We've got people that have visited every national park in the country. We've met people right now. We have people in here from France, people from Italy, lots and lots of local people at our particular campground, because it's an attractive campground that's quiet and it's nice. And people like to come back here from time to time, but we do have a lot of travelers as well. I hope that I've been able to answer some of the questions you might have, give you a little explanation about Campground Hosting. And all I've touched upon are more or less the public agencies. The Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Park, the Forest Service, the Bureau of Reclamation. I have not hosted for the BIA. I understand that they are very, very similar to the Forest Service. The duties are pretty much the same, depending, of course, on your campground. But I have not talked about any of the commercial campgrounds. Being somewhat of a snowbird, doing this in the summertime and then having our home in Arizona in the winter, we've met a lot of what they call full-time RVers who may go down south and work at a commercial campground as a work camper and be given their free camping for a few hours a week or whatever, a month to cover that. I haven't done that. I don't really like those kind of campgrounds. They're awfully commercial, and I just prefer being outside, out in the woods, out in the forest, whatever you want to call it. So if you have any other questions, I'd really like to hear them, and we can do a Q&A. As I get questions from campers coming up, I'll make more notes and we'll cover this a little bit, maybe in a little more detail if you want to later on. I would, one final comment though, and I'd probably do this in every one of my videos. If you've enjoyed it, if you subscribe to the video, we would really appreciate it. Please leave your comments right down here. Thank you. And keep on hiking.